You ate something today. Maybe it was fruit. Maybe it was bread. Maybe it was something that started as a plant before it became whatever form it arrived on your plate. You consumed it without ceremony, the way you consume everything, as fuel, as pleasure, as the ordinary background transaction of staying alive. You did not feel any particular kinship with it. You did not hesitate. It was food and you were hungry, and the category difference between you and what you ate felt so obvious, so absolute, so foundational that it did not need to be stated. You are a person. Food is not a person. The boundary between consumer and consumed is one of the clearest lines in your experience of the world. You are the subject. Everything on the plate is the object. That hierarchy feels written into the nature of things. And now, here is the fact that molecular biology hands you, without apology and without softening, when you actually look at what the genomes contain. You share approximately 60% of your functional DNA with a banana. Not metaphorically, not in some loose philosophical sense, literally at the level of the nucleotide sequences encoding the proteins that run your cells. Roughly 60% of the genes in a banana have counterparts in you that are recognizably, traceable, demonstrably the same gene, descended from the same ancestral sequence, doing the same or similar job in both organisms. You and the banana on your counter are, at the molecular level, significantly the same thing. Now here is the question that should stop you. If 60% genetic overlap with a banana does not make you a banana, what exactly is the other 40% doing? And if that 40% is what makes you human, if that is where personhood lives, where consciousness lives, where everything that separates you from produce lives, then what does it mean that the entire difference between a person and a piece of fruit is contained in less than half of the relevant molecular information? And what does that say about every other boundary you have ever drawn between yourself and the living world? Do not reach for comfort. The biology has none to offer. Let me build the intuitive picture first, because it is so culturally embedded that most people have never noticed it as a picture at all. The intuitive picture is hierarchical. At the top, humans, rational, conscious, morally significant, the measure of all things. Below us, other animals. Some of them fairly similar to us, some quite different, all of them lesser in ways that feel obvious even when they are hard to articulate. Below animals, plants, alive in some technical sense, but not experiencing anything, not mattering in themselves, fundamentally different in kind from anything we would call significant. And below plants, microbes and fungi and everything else that barely registers as life in the folk taxonomy that most people operate on without examining it. This hierarchy feels natural. It feels like it reflects something real about the difference between kinds of living things. And molecular biology does not exactly overturn it, but it does something more interesting than overturning it. It reveals that the hierarchy, whatever validity it has, is not grounded in genetic difference the way we imagined. The genetic differences between levels of the hierarchy are not what the hierarchy implies they should be. And when you see what they actually are, the hierarchy starts to look like something we drew on top of the biology rather than something the biology contains. If you want to understand how the universe actually works, not just how it looks, but how it works, hit that subscribe button. Let's find things out together. Let me tell you something about what DNA actually is and what sharing it actually means. Because the banana statistic lands wrong if you do not understand what you are comparing. DNA is a molecule, a long polymer made of 4 chemical bases arranged in sequences that encode instructions for building proteins. The genome is the complete collection of these instructions in an organism. When we say 2 organisms share a gene, we mean they both have a sequence of DNA that encodes a protein with recognizably similar structure and function, and that the similarity is high enough to conclude the 2 sequences descended from a common ancestral sequence rather than arising independently. The genes you share with a banana are not trivial genes. They are not decorative sequences sitting in unused corners of the genome. They are core operational genes, the machinery of cellular life. Genes that regulate cell division, that manage energy metabolism, that handle DNA replication and repair, that build the cytoskeleton, that run the fundamental biochemical processes without which no cell can survive. These are ancient genes. They were already present in the last common ancestor of animals and plants, which lived somewhere around 1.5 billion years ago. They have been conserved across that entire span of evolutionary time because they do jobs so fundamental that any mutation that disrupts them is lethal. Natural selection has been polishing these sequences for over 1 billion years, and they still work essentially the same way in you and in a banana because the problem they solve, how to keep a eukaryotic cell alive, has not changed. Here is the analogy I want you to carry. Imagine two buildings, one a medieval cathedral, one a modern skyscraper. They look nothing alike. Their purposes differ. Their aesthetics differ. Everything about the experience of being in them differs. But look at the engineering underneath. Both have foundations. Both have load-bearing structures distributing weight. Both have systems for moving air and water. Both have materials chosen for their ability to hold compressive or tensile stress. The deep structural solutions are shared because the deep structural problems are shared. Gravity is the same. Material physics is the same. The problem of keeping a large structure standing has a limited number of good solutions, and both buildings use them. Your cells and banana cells face the same deep problems. How to extract energy from molecules, how to copy DNA accurately, how to build proteins from genetic instructions, how to divide without losing information. The solutions to these problems were worked out by evolution once, over 3 billion years ago, and have been inherited by every complex organism since. The shared genes are the shared engineering solutions. They are not coincidences. They are the fingerprints of common ancestry and common problems. Do you see what happens? You are not like a banana in the way that two similar things are like each other. You are like a banana in the way that two buildings that descend from the same architectural tradition are like each other. The similarity is deep, structural, and causal. It is not resemblance. It is shared inheritance. Stay with me because now I need to take the numbers somewhere they get even more uncomfortable. You share approximately 60% of your functional genes with a banana. You share approximately 85% with a mouse. You share approximately 98.7% with a chimpanzee. These numbers are not in dispute. They are among the most robustly replicated findings in all of biology. And what they collectively reveal when you lay them out together is that the genetic distance between you and a chimpanzee is smaller than the genetic distance between a chimpanzee and a mouse. You and the chimpanzee are closer genetically than either of you is to a mouse. This is the part that keeps me up at night. Let's be honest about what 98.7% overlap with a chimpanzee means, because this number is famous enough that people have heard it and normalized it without feeling its full weight. 98.7% overlap means 1.3% difference. The human genome contains roughly 3 billion base pairs. 1.3% of 3 billion is 39 million base pairs of difference between you and a chimpanzee. This sounds like a lot until you realize what evolution has done with it. Language, abstract reasoning, cumulative culture, mathematics, the capacity to build civilization, and to sit here wondering about your own genetic relationship to fruit. All of that, the entire gulf between a chimpanzee and a human being, lives in 1.3% of the genome. And somewhere in that 1.3%, or in the regulatory sequences that control when and where genes are expressed rather than the genes themselves, is the difference that makes the difference. The genetic change that led to the specific pattern of human brain development, the mutations that altered the timing and extent of cortical growth, the sequence changes that modified the larynx and the neural circuits for language. We do not have a complete map of exactly which changes did what, but the changes are there, they are real, they are measurable, and they are startlingly small in proportion to the magnitude of their effect. Now here is where the identity question becomes genuinely destabilizing. If 98.7% shared genome with a chimpanzee is compatible with being a fundamentally different kind of thing, with having language and self-awareness and moral reasoning and all the properties we use to ground human specialness, then genetic overlap is not measuring what we thought it was measuring. Genetic overlap is not measuring kind. It is not measuring the depth of the difference between two organisms. It is measuring the similarity of the molecular toolkit they both use. And the molecular toolkit can be nearly identical while the product of that toolkit differs enormously. Because what matters is not just which genes you have, but which ones are active in which cells at which times and in what combinations. The difference between you and a chimpanzee is not 1.3% of the genome. It is a specific set of regulatory changes that altered the developmental program run by a largely shared genome. The hardware is almost the same, the software differs. And the software runs on the hardware in ways that produce creatures so different that for most of human history we did not recognize the genetic kinship at all. This is the disturbing implication I want to state without softening. The properties you use to ground your identity, your consciousness, your reasoning, your sense of self, your moral significance, are the products of a small number of genetic and regulatory differences sitting on top of a foundation that you share with mice and bananas and every other complex organism on Earth. The foundation is not uniquely yours. It is ancient and communal and widely distributed across the living world. What is yours, what is specifically human, is the top layer, the recent modifications, the changes accumulated in the last few million years of hominin evolution. You are not a special creation built from unique materials. You are a standard biological platform with a recent and unusual software update. Here is the visceral consequence. The next time you eat a piece of fruit, you are consuming an organism that shares the majority of its functional genetic information with you. The genes running the banana's cellular metabolism are your genes in the sense that they descend from the same ancestral sequences and do the same jobs. The molecular machinery of the banana's cells is recognizably the same molecular machinery running in your cells. You are not eating something fundamentally other. You are eating a distant relative. Every meal involving any biological material is a meal involving organisms that are, at the molecular level, variations on the same theme you are a variation on. Life on Earth is not a collection of separate inventions. It is one invention, copied and modified and diversified over 4 billion years, still running the original core code in every cell of every organism alive today. You are not separate from the living world. You are a branch of it. And the branch you are on is newer and stranger than the trunk, but it grows from the same roots. Now I want to take this to the place it actually deserves to arrive, because the banana statistic is not an argument for the meaninglessness of human distinctiveness. It is an argument for understanding what that distinctiveness actually consists of, which turns out to be more interesting than the story we usually tell. The standard story is that human beings are special because we are different in kind from other life. We have souls, or rationality, or consciousness, or moral agency, something that other organisms lack entirely, a discontinuity in the fabric of life that places us in a separate category. This story requires the genetic evidence to be wrong, or to not mean what it means, or to be irrelevant to the question of human significance. The story the biology actually tells is different. It says that human beings are not different in kind, but different in degree, that we are continuous with the rest of life, built from the same materials, running the same core programs, differing from other organisms in the specific modifications accumulated in our lineage, rather than in our fundamental nature. And this story does not diminish human significance. It relocates it. If what makes us remarkable is not that we are made of different stuff, but that the same evolutionary process that produced bananas and mice and chimpanzees also produced, in one recent and unusual branch, organisms capable of language and mathematics and art and self-reflection and the question of their own nature, then what is remarkable is not us in isolation, but the process that produced us. The same blind, undirected process that spent 3 billion years perfecting the cellular machinery you share with a banana also, without planning it, without aiming at it, produced the capacity to understand that process. The banana shares your genes. It does not wonder about them. You do. That is the 40% talking. And the 40% is enough. It has always been enough. Not because it makes you separate from life, but because it makes you the part of life that turned around and looked at itself. The most extraordinary thing about human beings is not that we escaped biology. It is that biology, running the same program it has always run, produced something that could ask why it was running. You are the universe's biology looking at itself and finding it strange. The banana is not doing that, but the banana gave you the platform to do it. And that debt is worth acknowledging, even just once, even just here. We are all running the same ancient code. Most of us just do not know it yet. If this twisted your brain a little bit, good. That means it's working. I'll see you in the next one.